So I read an interesting stat recently on happiness. So according to one Gallop opinion poll, unhappiness has been on the rise now for close to a decade. That since the study started in 2006, negative emotions have been steadily rising, and things like anger, sadness, stress and worry are now at an all-time high. So why is this happening? Well, there are lots of external factors, of course. Cost of living rises, COVID lockdowns, a few years ago, and generally the world just seems to be way more chaotic than it has been in recent history. But for me, the main reason is that we're never actually taught how to be happy. That most people either don't prioritise their happiness, or they don't think it's something that they can or even should work on. And in my opinion, this is a huge missed opportunity, because your happiness should be at least close to your number one priority. I mean, what's the point in doing stuff if it doesn't ultimately lead to more happiness? So in this episode, we're going to talk about happiness. This is important, and I want to share with you 3 big ideas that, when internalised, can make an instant difference to how much joy, fulfilment and happiness you feel in life. And I also want to share a practical exercise that can help you become happier today. So let's get started. Hey there and welcome to the Stress Less Living podcast. My name is Stephen Burns and I've been a practicing coach, trainer and hypnotherapist for 25 years. Each week I'll share easily digestible bite-sized ideas that you can immediately put into practice so that you can live a more harmonious and balanced life. Because life is challenging, but whatever we encounter, we always have a choice. We can take the easy route or the hard route, the low stress way or the high stress way. Well, the Stress Less Living podcast is about always looking for the easy routes in life, the low stress ways to accomplish your goals, get more of what you want, and ultimately live a happy and more effortless life. So if you're looking for the perfect antidote for the chaos of modern life, my friend, you are absolutely in the right place. Okay, let's get started. So, like I said, I want to share with you 3 big ideas that, when internalised, can make an instant positive difference to your overall levels of happiness. So let's dig in. So, big idea number 1, happiness is a process that you're actively involved in. And it's also something that you can influence. And this might seem like common sense, but so many people don't act as if this is true. They think that you either have happiness or you don't have happiness. They talk about it as if there's only so much to go around. There's a finite amount that we're given at birth, and that's your lot. You have to make do. But when you get down to it, happiness isn't really a thing, is it? You can't log on to Amazon one day when you're feeling a little bit down and buy 10 kilograms of happiness. It's just not possible, although I'm sure Jeff Bezos is currently working on it as we speak. But happiness is not a thing, it's a concept. It's a label that we use to describe our overall experience of life, how contented we currently feel. That when you get down to it, happiness is a process. It's something that we are actively involved in, and something that we can influence for the better, irrespective of our life situation. So this is important because when you believe that happiness is a commodity that you acquire, it then becomes something external and largely out of your control. But when you view it as something that you're actively involved in all the time, right now, then it becomes something that you can influence and experience more of. At the end of the day, happiness is not an outside-in process, it's mostly an inside-out one, and it's something that you discover internally. So when I was younger, I used to buy into what I refer to as the I'll be happy when myth. So I'm sure you've seen this in action, maybe you've experienced this for yourself. So it's where you say things like, I'll be happy when I meet a partner, or I'll be happy when I earn more money, or I'll be happy when I lose weight, or when I get a better job, or when I start a business. And the list can go on and on. And hey, it's fine to go after your goals. That's a healthy practice. It's a good thing to have. But the problem with setting things up in this way is that you're externalizing happiness way too much, and you're attaching a whole bunch of clauses to it. So it becomes like the golden elixir that you only get if you go through multiple different arduous trials and jump through all kinds of different hoops. And on top of that, you've also discounted the possibility that you can be happy right now, that you have enough in your life currently to experience a base level of happiness. And another thing you're doing is you're also discounting the possibility that happiness is actually your default state. It's how you come into the world and something that you can tap into and feel before you go after your goals and the things that you want. So that's big idea number one. Don't see happiness as a thing that you acquire. See it as a process that you're actively involved in, something that you can influence. So that's idea one. Idea number two is that there is a big difference between being happy and just feeling good. So happiness is more of a feeling that's in the background, isn't it? It's like a summation of our overall levels of fulfillment and contentment, rather than just an in-the-moment feeling. Because here's the thing, you can feel good in the moment, but not be that happy. So a classic example of this is people who take drugs or self-medicate by drinking loads and getting drunk all the time. These things might make you feel good in the moment, most of the time anyway, but in the long term, they're actually damaging your overall levels of happiness because you're chasing these quick dopamine releases and you feel good at the time, but you're left with this empty feeling. So I guess a softer example of this could be good old retail therapy. When you're feeling down and you go and buy something nice just to perk you up. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that from time to time, of course, but it's not going to lead to long-term happiness. And if you rely on it, it's going to create more problems. I hope you've got a good income. But these are all things that can make you feel good in the moment, but are they going to lead to long-term happiness? I don't think so. And also the opposite can happen too. You can feel bad in the moment, but still be happy overall. And I know that sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but it's not really. So say, for example, you're in a job that you love and it brings you lots of happiness, joy and meaning, but then you have a really big setback and you feel so bad, you feel rubbish because of it. But deep down, you know that things are still pretty good because you're involved in something that you love. So I get this from time to time in business. You know, I'm very lucky that I get to do something that I love and enjoy as a business. But the thing is, it doesn't always feel good. There can be difficult times because business is, of course, volatile. There's also a lot of responsibility, a lot of some stress involved, and you have to deal with the many ups and downs. Also in business, you have to put yourself out there. So that opens you up to the potential for disappointment, for being judged, and a whole bunch of other angsts and stuff that you eventually have to work through. So I don't always feel good in the moment, but at the end of the day, it still brings me so much joy, meaning and happiness because I'm involved in something that I love. I wouldn't want it any other way. I would miss it massively if I couldn't do it. So I think a good tip for this one is to know the difference between something that feels good and something that feels like a good fit for you. If we just go for things that make us feel good in the moment, then we end up just constantly chasing that quick fix of dopamine only to feel empty after it. But when you get involved in things that are a good fit for you, it adds meaning and purpose to your life, which then creates this lovely background happiness that sticks around for the long term because you're doing things that resonates with you, your values, the things that you care about. So do what you can to shift from just feeling good all the time to doing things that feel like a good fit, things that resonate with you. And that's going to add so much happiness to your life in the long term. So that's big idea number 2. And big idea number 3 is that happiness is multi-layered. It's not just one thing. There are different facets to it. So again, a lot of people think of happiness as a single entity. But personally, I like to view it as being multi-layered. You can look at it from a few different angles. And by doing so, this increases the potential you have to be happy. So for me, I like to think about happiness coming in 3 different layers or 3 different types. So the first is the happiness that we create. So like I said previously, happiness is a process and one that we are actively involved in all the time. So it's something that we can influence, it's something that we can nurture, develop, tweak and add to over time. Happiness is something that we can create more of. So for example, if we fill our life full of activities that fit with our deepest values, the things that are important to us, then we're going to be happier. You will have created more happiness in your life. So that's the first layer. The second layer is the happiness that we have available to us right now. Because here's the thing, the vast majority of people have enough in their lives right now to be happy, but they just don't see those things. It's like they've deleted them from their experience. And this is a natural thing that happens to all of us, and it happens because of something called the negative bias. So this is an idea from psychology that as human beings, we tend to highlight negative events in our life more brightly and strongly than positive ones. And there's an evolutionary reason why this happens. Our brain's prime directive is to keep us safe. So if we find ourselves in a potentially threatening situation, our brain highlights this experience strongly to make us aware of it so we don't make the same mistake again in the future. So what this means is we need to work a little bit harder to highlight the positive things in our life. Our biology makes us take these things for granted, which is a bit annoying, I know, but knowing this makes it possible for us to do something about it. And that's why things like practicing gratitude is super important. It helps you reverse the negative bias because you're giving all of the great things in your life the credit that they deserve. You're highlighting them more brightly, and this helps you reverse the negative bias. And I know practicing gratitude is a bit of a cheesy thing that Instagram influencers talk about, but it is an important thing to do because of the negative bias and this tendency we have to take the positive things in our life for granted. Hey there, if you are enjoying this episode and you'd like to learn about the fundamentals of meditation, then I have a video course that you can enroll on for free as a podcast listener. So this is normally a paid course, but as someone who listens to the podcast, you can enroll for free using the discount code in the show notes. So if you want to check out that, like I said, I'll include a link to that free meditation course in the show notes and all the information that you need. So that's the second layer, and the third layer is happiness as our default state. So this is the idea that happiness is the way that we come into this world. That irrespective of your life situation, you have an inherent ability to be happy right now, before you go after your goals, before you engage in enjoyable activities, before you do anything. So this is a very Buddhist idea, but one I absolutely love and totally subscribe to. But it is also quite a tricky one for people to get their head round because they're so used to chasing goal after goal after goal. The idea that happiness could be actually within them right now before they do anything can feel a little bit alien. So how it was explained to me was using a thing called the sun and clouds analogy. So say for example, it's nice and sunny outside, you're living somewhere else other than Scotland, which doesn't really get much sun. But when it's sunny, we feel the sun's rays, don't we? And if you're anything like me, you have to wear SPF 50 to not get burnt. I could get burnt in the winter, but anyway, that's a different subject. But then when it gets cloudy, we stop feeling the sun's rays quite as much. And sometimes we say things like, well, I guess the sun has gone away or the sun has disappeared. But the reality is, it's not gone away at all. It's not disappeared. We just can't see it or feel it as much because the clouds are getting in the way. So what if happiness works in the same way? Say we replace the sun with your happiness. And if you're having a good day, it's like there's no clouds in the sky and you can connect fully with that natural happiness. You can feel its rays strongly and all of the world feels like an amazing place. You maybe get a glimpse of this when you're relaxing in the sun, on a nice holiday, something like that. But then when we're having a hard time, bad experiences and negative thoughts can get in the way of connecting with this natural happiness. So they can be a bit like clouds, and they can sometimes take up so much space that we lose connection with this happiness and start to not feel it at all. And sometimes we can even get to the extent where we start believing that we don't have any happiness at all, that it's completely disappeared. But that's just not true. As it was with the sun, the happiness is still there, but we just can't currently see it. We're not connecting with it as much as we'd like. So I love this idea because it's suggesting that happiness doesn't really ever go away. We just temporarily lose connection with it. But to reconnect with it, we just need to acknowledge that it's there and allow the clouds of negativity to part so that we can see it a little bit more. So you may be wondering, how do you actually do that? Well, there are a few ways in, but ultimately they all involve slipping into the present moment. When we let go into the present moment, that's when we connect with this natural default state of happiness. Now, I'm not going to go into that in this episode, but if you want to learn how to be more in the present moment, then I have done a full episode on that. It's episode number 15. So that's the idea that happiness is multi-layered. And I love this idea because it opens up a much greater potential for happiness. There's more avenues that you can work on. If you make progress in each of these 3 layers, then your happiness potential increases massively. So that's 3 big ideas that when you internalize them will instantly increase your levels of happiness. So you may be wondering, how do you get started with this? What would be something practical that you can work on? Well, if you're interested in learning more about the subject of happiness, I do have an entire training on this. I'll include a discounted link to it in the show notes. However, I do want to give you something practical to get you started, just to get you going. And this is a very powerful exercise. And this is where you explore your definition of happiness. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, happiness is subjective. Your happiness will be different to mine, and my version will be different to wee Jeannie or wee Johnny's down the street. And the reason why I think this is important is because there is a lot of advice on YouTube, on blogs, or through Instagram, where influencers are telling you how you should be happy. The key to happiness is to achieve your goals. The key to happiness is to have good relationships. The key to happiness is to exercise. And that's not bad advice per se. In fact, it's good advice for some people, but the problem is they're projecting their version of happiness on you. And that might be a good fit for you, but it might not be. At the end of the day, your happiness is up to you. No one else gets to decide that. So happiness is subjective, and it's important to explore what it means to you. So a technique you can use to do that is to take a piece of paper, or you can do this on a tablet if you like, and write down the question, what does happiness mean to me? And then what you want to do is you want to ask this question several times in the evening just before you go to bed. And then you can do it again in the morning. You don't have to spend too much time. Just ask it a few times, let it process, and then let it percolate for the rest of the day. And then anytime you get insights during the day, you want to write these down in a journal, or you can jot them down on your tablet if you like. And do this for the next 7 days. And what you'll find is during the week, you'll come up with all kinds of really cool and deep insights into what happiness means to you. And then at the end of the week, you want to take a look at what you've written, the scribblings of a mad person, and you want to look for themes, things that pop up time and time again. And these will be pathways into the kind of things in life that's going to give you the most joy, the most satisfaction and meaning. So for me, words like creating, growth, sharing, contributing, making a difference, stepping into the unknown, doing things that are different and exciting, they always pop up when I do an exercise like this. But for you, your words might be completely different, or maybe there's a little bit of crossover. But the key thing is to notice which words naturally resonate with you, which ones come from within. And then from there, you can have a think, how can I do more things, or how can I include more of these elements into my life? So for me, if I'm creating, if I'm growing, if I'm doing things that allow me to share and contribute and make a difference, if I'm doing things that are a little bit different, that cause me to step out of my comfort zone into the unknown, then I know that I'm going to have a lot of happiness in my life, because those are the things that really resonate with me, the things that I value the most. So I'm curious, when you consider what happiness means for the next 7 days, what kinds of words come out for you? So there we have it. That's 3 big ideas that when you internalize them can make an immediate difference to your levels of happiness. So let's do a quick recap. Idea number 1, happiness is a process that you're actively involved in. It's something that you can influence. Idea number 2, there is a big difference between being happy and just feeling good. Don't just continually chase that dopamine high only to feel empty afterwards. You want to do something that is a good fit with you. When you do things that are a good fit, that's when you start to add more meaning and purpose to your life. that gives you this lovely overall feeling of happiness that sticks around for the long term. And idea number 3, happiness is multi-layered. And by recognising and working on each of these layers, this greatly increases your potential for happiness. And then we had a look at that practical thing that you can do. You write down the question, what does happiness mean to me? Consider that for the next 7 days, and then see if you can spot some themes that pop up time and time again. What are the key words and phrases that pop up regularly for you, and how can you add more of these things into your life? So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did like it, then I would love it if you could follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you feel especially generous, then if you could leave a review, it really does help get the word out. So once again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you in the next episode.